Hi. Hello. So I just read some books. I finished off the Ender Quartet by Orson Scott Card, and I really enjoyed them. I want to talk about them. So in this video, I'm going to chat about all four of them. I'm going to go into a bit more detail on Ender's Game, but I'm also going to chat a bit about Speaker for the Dead, Xenocide, and Children of the Mind. Yeah, so let's start with Ender's Game, shall we? I've read this book 3 times now at varying stages of my life. I first read it in my early teens, and I still adore it now as much as I did then. It's such a well written and harsh story that still holds up completely on rereads. I feel like it's the progenitor to a lot of trends that come later in the YA genre, like the all children's school with a unique game or challenge that trains them for their up and coming careers and proves their merit, the leaderboards for said games, the constant struggle against rival students, and the faculty that is purely seen as hands-offish, if not completely antagonistic. I feel aspects of this show up a lot down the line in stuff like, Red Rising, Hunger Games, Maze Runner, and probably a lot of others. However, while Ender's Game shares many of those aspects with those books, it aims to tell a story that doesn't bother making sure it has a clean and happy ending. We follow Ender Wiggin, a 6-year-old boy that is sent to a military training school as a part of a program to train the best of the best, to make a future general that will have the ability and skill to save humanity from a looming alien invasion. He is the third child in his family, in a society that has a child limit of 2. His older brother Peter is a genius like him, but is a sociopath and was denied from the training program because of this. The second child, Ender's older sister, Valentine, is equally intelligent, but too mild and compassionate. And so, the Wiggin family is asked to have a third child, hoping that Ender turns out to be a blend of his 2 older siblings. Leaving his family, though, is a double-edged blade. He is finally freed from the abuse that he constantly endures from Peter, but he also loses his one dearest friend, leaving behind his sister Valentine. On arriving to the school, Ender is left to feel absolutely isolated. His days there make him feel that there is no one in his corner, and any course of change in his life has to be manifested through his efforts alone. This is all justified and explained in passages from the school administration's point of view, but that doesn't excuse it. And as the book progresses, we see the effects this kind of training and psychological mayhem has on a small child. It leaves him hollow and nihilistic, struggling to understand what the adults want of him. Ender is fabulously written, and Card does a wonderful job at writing him. He is a child who is still hopelessly naive to the world around him, but also shows his intelligence and capability in the tasks set before him. However, as he breezes through his training with relative ease, life only gets harder. As with most training school settings, students are separated into distinct groups. In Ender's Game, they are small armies. Groups of students with a leader and a command structure that battle other armies in weekly combat challenges. Ender starts as a fresh underling in an established army, but after showing his skill in commanding, is soon given his own. However, there's a hitch. Instead of gaining command of a mix of experienced and fresh students, he is given an army of completely new and inexperienced kids that have to be trained from the ground up. In spite of this, Ender endures. He trains them, and they soon climb to the top of the leaderboard. Not to be deterred, the administration yet once more turn up the heat. Instead of fighting in weekly battles, Ender's army fights them daily. Things are stacked against him. Now he's fighting tired and exhausted. Now he's fighting an army that has already been given access to the arena. Now he's fighting 2 rival armies at once. And as he manages to still win these, even through fatigue and stress, other kids get envious and become a danger to Ender. Ender gets beaten down, and this book shows his mental struggle through it all and the lasting effect it has on him. His only solace when he is completely at his limit is his sister Valentine, who, near the midpoint of the book, reassures him and convinces him to continue, knowing that this will eventually break him if he does. Probably at this point that I should explain the alien threat they are training to fight against. Enter the Buggers, a race of hive-mind aliens that resemble insects and have launched 2 invasions on Earth that were barely fought off. Humanity is all too wary of the 3rd invasion. They're running against the clock to train these children into a commander with enough skill to fight the invading force and come out the victor. Ender endures the training regime and manages to outthink his way through the obstacles that are put in his way. He might not be the biggest or strongest among his peers, but it is clear that he is the smartest. Soon he has graduated to command school, where his learning shifts. Instead of the physical war games between large bands of kids, he now learns primarily on simulations of combat, commanding groups of virtual spaceships in a battle against a computer that is constantly evolving and learning from his own tactics. He takes the core principles he learned in the war games and uses them to come up with new strategies, using them to best this new challenge again and again. When he's shown that the computer has ceased being a challenge and has managed to outmaneuver each of the simulations given, he is pitted against someone smarter. Mazer Rackham is humanity's hero, the commander that managed to fight off the second bugger invasion. He is positioned as Ender's mentor. From now on, all simulations and our encounters will be hand-created by Rackham. In addition, he has a new tool in his arsenal. The Molecular Disruptor Device, or Little Doctor as it's nicknamed, is a device that is incorporated into his fleet and has the ability to destroy planets in their entirety. I think right about now, I should throw up a quick spoiler warning. I honestly didn't want to go into this much detail about Ender's Game, but it's kind of foundational on talking about the books to come. I've said a little bit earlier that, like, I enjoy Ender's Game on reread. Like, even when you know the end of it, it's still just such a satisfying experience to go through it. Anyways, spoilers now. So Ender's now pitted against a smarter, cleverer opponent. He's challenged to great degrees fighting against Rackham, constantly faced with new scenarios and different types of battles. In addition, the frequency and length is always changing. Weeks go by with days-long battles that drive Ender to exhaustion, but he still manages to succeed. He takes losses, but he wins them still. Finally, Ender is told that the day has come. He is ready to take the final test to become the commander of humanity's fleet. He is shown to the room where the simulation will be held, only to find that it is filled with military bigwigs and people there to watch his final test. Ender has finally reached his wit's end. He's exhausted and is sick of what he's been put through, so he decides to show that he isn't worthy to continue. He will intentionally flunk himself out of the test. Over the course of many hours, Ender uses brutal tactics. He is given a simulation where his fleet is facing insurmountable odds. He is completely outnumbered and told to attack through this enemy fleet to the planet below. He decides to show no mercy and hinge his entire attack on forcing the Little Doctor close enough to destroy the planet. He erased his fleet purely to protect that one ship, sacrificing a majority of the rest of it to see that done. And he does it. He pushes through the enemy defenses and uses the Little Doctor. He destroys the planet, and in his mind proves that he is unfit and unstable to lead. Not commander material and not ready for the responsibility he will be given. He goes to the command staff and expects to be reprimanded and removed, but is instead congratulated. They all pat him on the back and tell him he's done a wonderful job. Ender is confused and doesn't understand. Finally, Rackham reveals to him that ever since he replaced the simulations, Ender has been fighting actual battles, remotely controlling a fleet that has been slowly making their way to the bugger homeworld, and with the conclusion of this final battle, Ender has completely exterminated the buggers. Ender is rightfully shocked. Instead of being told to go home, he is hailed as a hero. He is rewarded for his soulless attack and is told that he is the savior of humanity. It's safe to say that at this point, he does not take it well. He becomes depressed and wallows in what he's done. He has committed Xenocide, entirely destroying an intelligent race. The only thing that pulls him out of the stupor is, again, his sister. Valentine comes to him and asks him to come with her. She is going on one of Earth's first colony vessels, taking the long, near-light-speed trip to a distant, now uninhabited bugger colony world. He agrees and thrives in the new world, using the colony as a place to build and create, paying back a portion of the moral debt he has incurred by his actions. While exploring this new world, he discovers something familiar to him, a scene from a game he used to pass the time with in the military school, built into the landscape of this foreign world. He follows the structure to the center and discovers something, an egg. One single white egg containing the last remaining bugger hive queen. It is able to communicate with him via telepathy, and through this connection, he learns that after the second invasion, the buggers realized that humanity was sentient. The buggers, as a hive mind species, have the queen, and the queen controls all the drones. And to them, killing the drones is as simple as clipping fingernails. It's not destructive, and is simply a way for one group to tell another that they are claiming space. To them, they thought they were merely exerting their power on Earth by killing some of Earth's drones, and when they discovered that humanity was sentient, they felt a grave loss and great regret. Ender learns that after the second bugger invasion, there was never going to be a third, but by then it was too late. Humanity loaded the gun and Ender fired it. It is now his responsibility to find the right home for this egg, so that the new hive queen might grow and one day return the buggers to the world. In the meantime, Ender writes a book, a story from the hive queen's perspective that tells the tale through the eyes of a completely foreign creature. He writes to show people that the buggers weren't the horrors that they thought they were, that they were beautiful and an intelligent race that meant the humans no harm, recontextualizing the demonized creatures in the eyes of humanity. He signs this book as The Speaker for the Dead, a title he uses to tell the world the truth about this race he's destroyed. And that's how the story ends, and I absolutely adore it. It's probably one of my all-time favorite books at the moment. That being said, that's not the end of the series. This is one of 4 books, but it's so vastly different from the others, I feel like it garnered a bit more of explanation instead of just waffling about random aspects I like, which I will be doing for the other 3. The second book, Speaker for the Dead, starts out 3,000 years after the end of Ender's Game, and still follows Ender. Due to the nature of near light speed travel, time passes slower for the travelers. As a result, a month-long voyage from one system to another results in the passing of vast amounts of time, to the point that a generation or 2 has passed since the start of the voyage. Ender and Valentine have been traveling near constantly. They never settle down and go from colony to colony, visiting and teaching and learning. Valentine has been writing histories of humanity to better contextualize the now far past that she was a part of. Ender takes up his role as Speaker for the Dead and continues to speak, creating a kind of pseudo-secular religion. Speaker for the Dead is no longer the author of that famed text that changed people's views on the buggers. It is instead a role. Someone who speaks for the dead is asked to speak for someone recently passed. They join the community of the recently departed with one goal in mind: to learn the true story of the deceased, and when they feel they are ready, speaking. Before the community, they tell the story of the person, leaving nothing out. Every victory, every flaw, everything that that person was, and in the process, they bring transparency and closure to the community and the recently departed. Now, humanity has developed space a ton in 3,000 years, and there are now over 100 human colonies on planets across the galaxy. Throughout this time, we have discovered one single planet that has another intelligent race on it. The Catholic Brazilian colony of Lusitania has a species of pig-like sentient creature on it, nicknamed the Piggies, and as a result, there is only one town on the entire planet. Only 2 people, the colonists' xenologists, are allowed to interact with this race, and even they are under stringent restrictions on what they can and can't say. Humanity is very wary of impacting the Piggies' technological development. Think the Star Trek Prime Directive. It is in this setting that we join Ender, who just received the news that one of the 2 xenologists on Lusitania has been brutally murdered by the Piggies. Staked to the ground and disemboweled and dissected, while still alive, Ender is asked to speak for him, and so he goes. I think that's as far as I want to go for just a beat-for-beat explanation of the plot. Suffice it to say that this is not an action book. Most of this book is dialogue, as it explores the Piggies and their culture, trying to understand them and figure out why they did what they did. It's a wonderful exploration of a culture of a species that's in no way similar to our own. As the story progresses, more and more is explained and understood, until at the end I had a profound understanding of how this culture works and thinks, to the point that everything seemed completely understandable from their perspective. The other story in this book involves the family of the adopted child of that Xenocide died. Over the course of Ender's flight to this world, she has grown up and has a family of her own. Everyone in it struggles with their own flaws and issues. While Ender probes to find out information about the person he has to speak for, he makes it his mission to heal this family, and in the process, they heal him. Both Ender's Game and Speaker for the Dead won Hugos in their respective year, and I think both easily earned them for vastly different reasons. Ender's Game is fast-paced and deals with the psychology of one small boy out of his element. Speaker for the Dead, however, is a lot slower. It takes its time to dig into the issues of this family, of this alien species, and even still those of Ender himself. It uses its words wisely and doesn't overstay its welcome, and it left me with a sense of profound satisfaction and fulfillment upon finishing it. The last 2 books, Xenocide and Children for the Mind, I'm going to refer to together. The author, Orson Scott Card, meant it to be one book, but split it down the middle to 1, make his publisher happy, and 2, to keep it just an absolutely massive volume. The first 2 books in the series are fantastic, dare I say masterpieces, but these last 2 are where things kind of start to drag into longer philosophical science fiction. If you love the characters from Speaker for the Dead and want to be with them longer, or just want to see how the plot ends, I'd fully recommend going on and reading the books. Just know it is a lot slower, and really takes its time exploring a bunch of different concepts. If that kind of stuff interests you though, you're in for a treat. This book covers a broad range of topics, from what makes you you, to a breakdown of connections between people, to faster-than-light travel, to philosophy and politics, to a ton of classic interpersonal drama. I think that interpersonal drama is actually what compels me the most in these last 2 books. Like Speaker for the Dead, they have a lot of dialogue. There's a bit more action sprinkled throughout, but I still think the meat and potatoes lies in that dialogue. From quiet conversation to scientific debate to absolutely heated arguments, these are the things that really show Card's skill and made me continue with the series. Card is amazing at creating characters that are all deeply flawed due to various factors in their past, and reflect that flawed nature in their actions and words. There were so many scenes where what characters said was downright frustrating or hard to listen to, but it made sense because I knew their past and understood what drove them to act this way. Another thing that I loved about these books was the way characters always tried to talk things out to a resolution. There were so many scenes where if I were in them, I would have come to blows. Like scenes where just absolutely horrible things were being said to each other, and I think if I were there, I would have no response except to deck someone or everyone. But notably, the characters don't do this. They instead keep a level head, most times, and talk things out, and that was super compelling to me. It felt almost like a counterpoint to Becky Chambers' writing. If you don't know, Becky Chambers, also a Hugo winner, writes in a very hopeful science fiction style. Her books rarely feature any serious stakes, yet are still incredibly compelling. However, her worlds are a bit idealistic. I found this in her Wayfarer series most of all, where every single conflict gets talked out until a perfect solution is created and everyone feels good afterwards. These books don't do that. Sure, when conflict arises, they'll talk it out, but very rarely are concessions made to the point that all parties are happy. It feels more realistic. While I still absolutely love Chambers' writing, there was something nice about seeing more familiar scenarios when it comes to heated discussion. And lastly, I just want to say that Quartet is the most selfish, hateful, spiteful, irredeemable, frustrating, argumentative, non-sympathetic character I have ever seen. I hate her guts and hope she dies painfully. And that's it. I love these books, and they're probably some of my favorite sci-fi I've read recently. There's a bit of a disconnect between Ender's Game and the rest of the series, but Card explains in one of the interviews he did for the end of the audiobook that Ender's Game was kind of meant to be a prequel to the actual story he was trying to tell. Ender's Game was initially published as a short story in a magazine, and it was only when Orson Scott Card went to a publisher with Speaker for the Dead that he realized that there was more context that could be had. So he asked the publisher, hey, can I work through and write this other book to kind of preface this first one? And so he took Ender's Game and fleshed it out and added more to it and made it better and published it as a novel, and then went and wrote Speaker for the Dead and Xenocide and Children of the Mind. So Ender's Game does kind of feel like it's just tacked to the front in the way it's so stylistically different from the other two, or three. Anyways, it differs from the series and is very tonally different, but it still feels super familiar and is so great on a standalone. I think if anything at all, read Ender's Game. If you liked Ender's Game and want to read more, I'd read Speaker for the Dead, but do not bring expectations that you have from Ender's Game to Speaker. They are so vastly different and so different in tone that you just need to drop expectations back to zero. Bring the knowledge you have from Ender's Game, the understanding of the story and the characters, and then start Speaker from the ground up. Actually, when I first read Ender's Game, because I bought my copy here in, I think, like a chapters when I want to say like 14, 15. So I read it then. I read Ender's Game. It was fantastic. I buy Speaker for the Dead. And actually, when I pulled out this copy to read it now, I still had the bookmark at like chapter 2. I had bought Speaker for the Dead right after Ender's Game. I was thrilled with it. Got 2 chapters in and thought, this is nothing like Ender's Game. This is awful. And haven't touched it until I came back to the series. So just know, it is vastly different from Ender's Game in style. And if you finish Speaker for the Dead and still want more from those characters and more of that style, by all means, go and finish the series. Read Xenocide, read Children of the Mind. But if you want to just end at Speaker for the Dead, do that too. Speaker for the Mind, not so much, but Xenocide is a massive volume to get through. I think I only got through it because of the grace of the audiobook, so I could just listen to it at work and keep going, and it was less of a commitment for me to actually focus and read it. But there were a few sections that really dragged. Alrighty, I'm tired of this. I wanted to make this video kind of as a proof of concept, but also because I, again, really enjoyed these books. And writing a mindless rant like this helps further solidify and appreciate this mind. So if you got some enjoyment out of my inane drivel, more power to you. And if this video convinces even one person to read one of these books, all the better. But for now, I'm out. Alrighty, let's hope my audio is just not like absolutely dog shit. That would be hilarious.